You're listening to Radio Blah Blah with Jeff and Jeff.
Hello and welcome to our second edition of Radio Blah Blah. I'm Jeff Scott in New Brunswick, Canada, and joining me from the other side of the Bay of Fundy is...
Cool Uncle Jeff, Jeff Gray.
And Jeff is in Nova Scotia,
I'm in Nova Scotia, Stewiacke, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Almost, like I said, almost directly east of St. John. I was looking at the map where you are.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember when Chris Medic did some graphics for us for East Coast Kiss Tribute. Mm-hmm. He had a compass on there, and the compass it almost perfectly bisected St. John, New Brunswick, and Stewiacke.
Well, here's the thing. If you could fly, as the crow flies, from my city to your city, it's hardly anything. But you got to go around. If you look at the map, you've got to go around this thing called the Bay of Fundy, which is a good 4-hour drive from my house to your house. Yeah,
this thing.
You could take a ferry, but the ferry it's probably 1/3 the distance of the Newfoundland ferry and probably 3 times the cost.
but then you'd have to still have like a 2.5-hour drive from the ferry.
To get to Halifax then is still another 2.5-hour drive. Yeah. So
anyway, so we got the geography straightened out.
That's right. So tonight we're going to talk about the legend of David Bowie.
Yeah, David Bowie. I mean, such an impact on. We all know that he recently passed away from liver cancer. Mm-hmm. Quite unexpectedly for a lot of people. He was quite secretive about his illness, he didn't publicize it.
It's kind of strange. It's kind of eerie because there's a photo of him taken on his 69th birthday, which I think was 2 or 3 days before he died. And it was taken by his wife, and he's standing there in a suit and a fedora and smiling and looking quite happy, and it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Also, his last video was incredibly eerie. Have you seen that?
Black Star?
The one I was thinking was Lazarus.
Oh.
It's really kind of creepy. Anyway, but I mean, that's what Bowie was. I mean, Bowie went for all kinds of different looks and themes and images and whatever.
Well, I think what we want to do is we want to celebrate sort of his impact and his influence on everything, art, movies, music. Yep. But you mentioned that I put on our Radio Blah Blah page on Facebook. I actually put a quote there from the producer of his most recent album, and I'm just going to read it here. If I can get it up here. That sounds a little lewd, But he planned this, I guess. I guess this has been sort of 18 months in the making, between when they were making this album, knowing that he was sick, and then making sure he put this album out last fall, and then. But here's what. I'm just trying to get my computer to work here for me. It says the time. His producer is Tony Visconti. He said he always did what he wanted to do, and he wanted to do it his way, and he wanted to do it the best way. His death was no different from his life, a work of art. A work of art.
Wow.
He said he made Black Star for us, his parting gift. I knew for a year this was the way it would be. I wasn't, however, prepared for it. He was an extraordinary man, full of love and life. He will always be with us. For now, it's appropriate to cry.
Yeah.
Right. So how he did this, like I did a bit of research this morning, and like I said, I always thought about I posted on our page the Black Star video, which I didn't know about until I read that quote, and I played it, and it is about a 10-minute video. It's very conceptual, but I look at it and say, oh my gosh, people say it's creepy, but it's quintessential David Bowie. He I think everything he's ever done in his career, when I first saw it, I was always kind of taken aback at first. I always didn't get it at first, and then years later I started to appreciate it. It was he had that kind of impact on me. It wasn't like I didn't follow him through, like I wasn't into the stuff he did at any given point in time so much, but so I was thinking about that he's always ahead of me a little bit, and I would catch up and appreciate it later. But anyway, so I got a bunch of thoughts about him, and we'll go from there.
Well, what you said there hit the nail on the head. He did what he wanted to do, and which makes him such an original. And that's what I like about Bowie. That's what I respect about him. And there are so many artists. I mean, there's so many artists that can't be original because they're trying to keep it so mainstream. They're trying to get so much radio play. and trying to do what the record companies like. And every now and again, there are these people that pop up like Bowie, and they're complete originals. And I mean, I'll just go through some names I jotted down. Frank Zappa.
Yes.
He did what he wanted to do.
Right.
Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Annie Lennox.
Yeah.
Bjork.
Mm-hmm.
Sinead O'Connor.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Waits. Lady Gaga. Prince. David Byrne. I mean, every one of these people were doing music that made people notice. And even if half of them said, "Huh? What? I don't get what you're doing. I don't understand this, or I don't understand you." That's fine. And Zappa didn't care.
Yeah.
Zappa really didn't care if people bought his albums or not, because his motto was, "If you like it, you'll buy it. If you don't like it, I don't care." Not in those exact words, but he'd said that so many times. And what I like about Bowie is he's such an original. Just doing music the way he wants it. And when that happens, you hear the soul of a person in the music. You can really hear it there, because you don't hear. I don't hear a lot of that in the music I hear on the radio.
Well, this is true, and I think one of the things I thought about, like, I kind of went through the decades in my head, but the other person I was thinking of when you were talking about people who did kind of things uniquely in their own way. Another name I'd throw in there would be Freddie Mercury. Would be another guy I might throw in there. Yeah. And even though they became quite popular, they were definitely off the wall.
Well, yeah. I mean, their brand of rock was, could be compared to what was popular at the time, Led Zeppelin and Stones and whatever, but doing it in their own way, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I think back, when I think of David Bowie, my first recollections of David Bowie was when I was, 12 years old, 15 years old, when I was living in Massachusetts, and he was really part of my soundtrack. And not that, again, I used to listen to top 40 radio and soul music, and this is before, like I said last year, before I really became a rock listener. But I just remember his music, at the time, songs like Fame, Golden Years, that type of music. All these sort of, you think about them, they're so different than anything.
That's the thing about Bowie. I mean, if you listen to the Genie, to me, he's got such a Zeppelin tone on that. The guitar sounds very Jimmy Page, and there's little tiny bits of harmonica coming through, just not much. Almost a tiny bit, and done in the way that Robert Plant did that, by using a microphone through a guitar amp. There's just a tiny hint of it, and although it's very Bowie-ish, it's just got a Zeppelin groove through the whole thing, and nothing else he's done sounds like the Genie. Nothing else sounds like Golden Years. Nothing else sounds like Starman. Every tune he puts out is so different.
Well, when he came out with the Ziggy Stardust stuff, he made a drastic change after that, and intentionally, when he moved from England to New York, I think it was, and he went from Space Odyssey, Ziggy Stardust kind of things to what he called Plastic Soul. And it was that was Fame, it was Golden Years, that was Young Americans. Remember that song? Young Americans, Young Americans. And I thought about, as a songwriter, and I write songs myself, and I know you've done some songwriting too, but you certainly played a lot of different songs. You think about the structure of those songs and the melodies of those songs, and where do those ideas come from? Like, they're so they don't sound like a song you'd sit down with an acoustic guitar and just say, "Oh yeah, golden years, bop bop bop." What is it?
Yeah. It comes from, I don't know, but that's what makes these songwriters, people actually write and produce and publish, that's what makes them so special. I find it difficult to write songs. I really do, as much as I understand music, and I've got a great vocabulary.
Yes.
When it comes to writing a song, I don't know. It's all been done. I just don't know what to do. I'll get these little musical ideas in my head, and I start strumming out a guitar, but I've got nothing to say, and I can't write songs.
I think with someone like David Bowie, he's just a complete artist. I mean, he was one of these people that everything impacted everything. He was an artist in the true sense. He painted, he wrote music, he was in he loved acting. Anything artistic in nature, he had his foot into, somehow his toes into. Like the music that he wrote is so. I mean, I write lots and lots of songs, but he just there are these special people that come along that have a calling, if you will. And I often say that, like when I write songs, I don't write a lot of my songs, Jeff. I mean, I think my guitar does, because I don't think them. They just come out sometimes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing myself to David to
no one can compare themselves to
I'm
David.
not doing that. David Bowie, exactly. But did you know that he co-wrote that song? That song Fame? Did you know that he co-wrote that with John Lennon?
I didn't know that, but what I did realize was, what was it? Something from the Les Dance album, China Girl.
Yeah,
that's Iggy Pop.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Oh yeah, well, that whole Ziggy Stardust thing, right? Mm-hmm. That character that he came up with was actually based upon Iggy Pop and Lou Reed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does look very Lou Reed-ish.
You know what I mean?
Should I say, Lou Reed looks kind of David Bowie-ish.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a huge Lou Reed fan.
No, me either.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
And he wrote that song for who sang it? Somebody else did it. All the Young Dudes. Remember that song?
Mott the Hoople.
Yeah, he wrote that song for them.
Wasn't Bowie? Oh, okay. I thought Bowie was in Mott the Hoople for a while because I knew that was his song.
No, he wrote the song. I thought I did.
He wrote it for Mott the Hoople, or he wrote it and they used it.
But I didn't think of it at the time. But I read it this morning and I thought back, said, "Oh my gosh, that's right." That sounds just like David Bowie. I never knew it until I did. That's the beauty of this show, Jeff.
Yeah.
What I really am loving about doing this kind of activity that you and I are doing now, doing this podcast and the previous one we did about Kiss, is that you learn so much by doing this.
Because you don't want to go on here without any kind of doing some background research.
Of course.
The other night I watched a lot of David Bowie, and it wasn't in preparation for the show. I was just in the mood to listen to Bowie.
Right.
Because there was so much. Facebook was just flooded with so many pictures and videos, and so I clicked on one, and then I said, okay, I need to hear this one, I need to hear this one. I even played the Christmas one with Bing Crosby, which is lovely. I mean, I enjoyed it not as a Christmas song, but as a David Bowie song, because he breaks away from that rumpa-pum-pum, and it's its own complete original song altogether, and it's beautiful.
Peace on Earth.
It doesn't have to be a Christmas song. It's just Peace on Earth is the message. And just lovely. But anyway, I was playing so much David Bowie, and what I really started to appreciate more than anything was the tone of his voice. I mean, yes, you have to look at the originality he has and his songwriting and his impact and his legacy. But after watching 10 or 12 or more videos back to back, I thought his voice is so rich. I've never heard him sing a bad note. And the range, he can really get deep, and he can go so high, almost into falsetto. And I really had an appreciation for his voice. When you break down music into all its elements, form, tone, composition, whatever. To me, that's what impressed me so much in that hour and a half. Was just the tone of his voice. Go ahead.
Yeah, I saw. I did a little research on that same piece there, the Little Drummer Boy, and they actually wrote. He originally, I guess David didn't want to do it. It was for Bing Crosby's Merry Old Christmas Show. In 19, it was so the. And
it looked like a TV show, didn't it?
No, that's what it was.
Just the campy dialogue.
That's that's what it was. They wrote. He was to be on the show, and he was attempting at that time. David Bowie was attempting to normalize his image, because he had such an image of because he had come out and said he was bisexual, and that wasn't an issue so much in Europe, but it was more of an issue in America. And so he was trying to normalize his image, and that's why he was doing the show. But I saw some documentary where they were talking about this, and they asked David to do the Little Drummer Boy, and he said, I don't want to do that. I hate that. I don't like that song. Yeah. And so he and these other writers got together, and they actually wrote that other piece. It's called Peace on Earth. To go over the top of Bing Crosby's song. And they showed a quote from Bing Crosby afterwards. It says, "Yes, a fine young man, clean-cut young man. He's got a good voice, and he reads his lines well." And I know Bing Crosby probably had no idea who this guy David Bowie was, right?
Well, that was sort of the shtick between them. They said, David Bowie arrives at the door. I guess Bing is house sitting for some neighbor or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm David. I live down the road, and he's not this off the wall Ziggy Stardust.
No.
He's just this very nice, very polite young Britishman. who comes in and says, "Oh, I'd like to play the piano. Do you want to share a song?" And yeah, it is David Bowie presented as a very nice, clean-cut, average guy.
Yeah. And they and that's what it was for. And what happened was they recorded that in '77 in September, and actually Bing Crosby died in October. The next month, he actually died the next month.
Wow.
And then when they put the show out, there was a lot of speculation that it was edited because that David Bowie and him weren't actually together for the show. That somehow they had edited it to put them together because of the timing of when Bing Crosby had died was so close to when they recorded it. This was one of those moments I wrote down. I wrote down these iconic, moments in my life that when I think back on my soundtrack and the video track of my life about David Bowie. And this is one of the critical ones. I picked on it too, Jeff. It's one of those moments that magic strikes. I guess they only practiced for an hour to get this song down. And they're singing two different songs.
They are,
right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was one of them. He had lots of really cool collaborations, didn't he?
Well, he had that thing with Mick Jagger, Dancing in the Streets.
Yeah, that was weird.
I don't really like. Well, it's so 80s, and they're in their trench coats, and they're just over dancing it, as far as I'm concerned. It's not Jagger, and it's not Bowie. It's just complete 80s crap, and I'm sorry.
But it sticks in your mind.
I didn't like it.
It's stuck in your mind,
does.
doesn't it, right? I just said that I can never forget that one when they're both back, too, and they flip their jackets up and they shake their asses at the screen, right?
And there's one point where their faces are so close, it looks like they're going to kiss each other.
Well, it's
very awkward.
They claim to have had an affair, had a relationship of some sort, right? I don't know what that looked like. Probably they got stoned one night and reached over and grabbed the wrong person.
I don't want to know what that looks like.
Well, I mean, that's just what they did. So that was what was kind of funny about that. But that's an iconic moment. I mean, I can see that whole video. And it was very effective. It was. I'm like you. Like I said. And David Bowie's one. They're both. When you look at the two of those guys, you want to talk about two guys that are strange dancers.
David Bowie I was watching something. I can't remember what it was. He's on stage doing a duet with someone, and it was Tina Turner.
Yeah.
And they were doing "Let's Dance," the old '50s version. Come on, let's dance. Da, 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 da. And then that kind of melds into Bowie's "Let's Dance." But Bowie's got this weird dance. He does this thing with his. It's almost like a cross between Elvis and an orangutan. I don't know. It's really weird.
He's got his hands in his pockets, and he's
and the knees start going, and the hips go back.
It's just different, right? Like I said, you put in Jagger's, like, who knows what he looks like. His body's broken in different pieces. he's like Elaine from Seinfeld almost, right? that kind of weird. But that was a very iconic moment. One of the other collaborations that I thought was extremely special was the one that David Bowie did with Annie Lennox.
That before that he did it with Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, they did the actual recording, but I mean, I guess what I was thinking of was what was special for me was I didn't actually like that. The recording itself, I didn't really inspire me all that much. But when they did it live, when Annie Lennox and he did it live at the Freddie Mercury tribute in 1992, that performance was extraordinarily powerful.
It was, yeah.
And
at the time, David Bowie was it Bowie? Had a friend who was dying of AIDS or had died of AIDS. And he got down, he said, I don't know what else to do. And he got down on one knee and said the Lord's Prayer. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was either before the song or after the song.
I think it was before.
Yeah. He said, I don't know what else to do other than this. And he got down and said the Lord's Prayer. And it was certainly very theatrical. It certainly made you take notice
and you remember what
of him amongst everyone else who'd been on that stage.
Well, you remember when, I mean, there was a whole bunch of really great performances in that show. But
amazing show.
It was one of the best I've ever seen. But I remember what Annie Lennox was dressed like when she came out. She came in like this big puffy ballerina kind of dress.
And this raccoon kind of makeup.
Yeah.
Almost kind of Marilyn Manson looking. Pre Marilyn Manson.
Well, I think he must have tried to look like her because obviously it was exactly what I was thinking of too.
Yes. Yeah.
But you notice in that you go back and watch that performance and you watch how she grabs on to David Bowie and they press their heads together when they're singing the song. And I feel like she led it, but I just did the two of them are just so strong in terms of their performances. That just sticks in my brain. It was one of those iconic moments that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole show was like that, but I mean, that really was an important thing. Now, so were you like a fan of Space Oddity, the song?
I love the song.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Just going back a little bit further, David Bowie was not something that was considered normal in my house, and I grew up in a very conservative home. My father's record collection consisted of Neil Diamond and Gordon Lightfoot, which are great artists. But David Bowie. I'll tell you, the only exposure I had to Bowie was they used to show clips of Ashes to Ashes.
Yes.
On television, and it was kind of creepy.
Definitely.
And I didn't really care for the music. It had just weird kind of boing boing kind of a keyboard sound.
Yeah.
Bong, 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 and him with this weird, almost like Tin Man makeup. It was weird. The other thing too was they kept advertising this movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth, and that looked kind of creepy as well. So to me, it was like David Bowie's just kind of this creepy thing. So I kind of let him go. It's like I didn't really latch on to David Bowie at all. Fast forward a few years, I get into high school, and David Bowie Let's Dance is a huge album.
Right.
But my friends were starting to listen to some older stuff, and I thought I didn't like Let's Dance. I didn't like the song Let's Dance. There's other stuff in that album that I really like Modern Love and China Girl.
Oh yeah, Modern Love.
We started listening to Ziggy Stardust, and I bought Changes One Bowie, which is like a greatest hits. But it had
Changes,
some great stuff. It had Changes and all his hits I think it came out a little bit before
Changes.
Yeah, and it had Golden Years and Starman.
I forgot about Changes.
All those stuff. Yeah, great stuff. And then I discovered the Bowie that I missed through the 70s. But and in that album, just a picture of him so plain, just a black and white portrait of him, not looking like some kind of a spaceman or whatever. And I just really enjoyed the music on it. And Space Oddity, just love the acoustic work on it. He was a lover of the acoustic guitar, and the 12-string acoustic was very present in his stuff that he was doing.
Well, the reason I mentioned that was because, and I shared on the Facebook page already prior to the show going out, I shared a video from Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield. He did Space Oddity, a video there, and
I got a little inside scoop on that.
Tell us about it.
The guy who produced that video, or should I say edited it, is Andrew Tidby from right here in St. John.
Is that right?
New Brunswick, yes. And my wife works sort of in and out of contracts with television production, and she knows Hemmings and Tidby and all those people here. That there's not much of an industry here in St. John, but there is one. So anyway, probably about, I don't know, sometime in the last 2 or 3 years, he's having a conference call with Chris Hadfield and David Bowie tomorrow. I said,
wow.
The astronaut and David Bowie, why? What's going on there? And I kind of forgot about that, and then fast forward about, I don't know, 8 or 9 months, and all of a sudden we find out, hey, Chris Hadfield is up in space doing this cover version of a Bowie song. So yes, he actually was talking to Bowie about that. And so if you're not sure what we're talking about, Chris Hadfield, the Canadian astronaut, made the first music video made in space, and he did a cover of Space Oddity. And it was produced and edited here in St. John, New Brunswick.
I did not know that, and I shared it.
I
shared it on the Facebook page just before we went on the air here, Jeff. And but I met Chris Hadfield. Actually, he does corporate events now. He'll actually go and do. He's a speaker, keynote speaker. I was in Toronto here in October, and he was a keynote speaker at our the place that I work. And he quite phenomenal, actually, his story. But anyway, it just goes to show. Can you imagine, Jeff? When I think of that, can you imagine if yourself being in a position where you've written a song and it's so special that something like that would happen? That someone would that would that someone would be recording your song in the space station. One of the things I was thinking about, you started talking about Let's Dance. And that's really when, I've been thinking about this, and I'm thinking, David Bowie, when the video age came out, in the early 80s, when videos really started to take off, that's really when the rest of the world kind of caught up to David Bowie, because he was ready for that. He'd already started doing some of that.
Exactly. I mean, I found the video for Space Oddity, and I thought, well, we didn't see this whenever it was made, 76 or 77. We didn't see that because they weren't showing videos on TV. Maybe some channels were. We weren't seeing very many. But by the time, we hit the early 80s, 82 or 83, you had channels devoted to showing music videos.
Right.
So any artist who was putting anything out had to have a video. But that suited Bowie. But you could also say the same thing of so many other bands like Queen and Pink Floyd and Kiss, who were so visual. Now all of a sudden that this video is out, it's like their best work is behind them.
Well, for him though, it was like that's when his resurgence happened, right? It was because you start.
Sorry, go ahead.
You were talking about, Let's Dance and China Girl and Modern Love, and I remember when those videos came out. I mean, they were striking, and I really wasn't a David Bowie fan at that time. But watching a video show was like listening to the radio. You couldn't like today. You can control what videos you watch. You just go on YouTube and pick which ones you want to watch. You had to wait you had to take what they gave you.
Exactly.
So, but Let's Dance and China Girl, those and they were stories. They weren't just standing up in front of people with a guitar, and they were quite compelling. But I remember Let's Dance and China Girl. I remember I said this was a bit of a soundtrack to my life. When Donna and I first got married, we were traveling back and forth to Yarmouth from Halifax. We were living in Halifax when we first got married. When Let's Dance and that came out, and I just remember driving the South Shore, down through Liverpool and Lockport on the way to Yarmouth, back and forth, and certain types of music that Donna would buy, we'd be playing in the car. And I remember I never would have bought it. Let's Dance was one of the things. The other one she had was the Motels that keep stuck. Remember the Motels?
Yeah, Canadian band. Which we didn't mention on the last show. The Motels?
Yeah.
I thought they were.
Maybe they're Scottish.
Oh, another band I thought was Canadian, but they're really Scottish.
I'm not even sure. I don't think they are, but anyway, we'll go back to that. But that soundtrack, did you recognize? Do you know the guitar player on Let's Dance?
Yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
I don't know a lot of people realize that.
So what an iconic sound! He really, the bits he added were so sparse and limited. But when he plays one note, and you say, "Well, that's Stevie Ray."
It's critical, though.
You just know it's him.
Oh, it's part of that sound of that song.
Yeah.
It's absolutely critical. Right?
But getting back to what you're saying about the videos, and I think it's ironic that Bowie being so visual in terms of costume and hairstyle and androgyny, now comes the video age, and he's looking very normal.
Absolutely.
He toned down his image to make a video. If you look at China Girl, he just looks like any other 80s rock star with the short 80s haircut and the colorful clothes. And
it was a takeoff on some movie. I can't remember what movie it was, that video. I have to go back and look at it.
I think it's From Here to Eternity.
Oh, that could be. There you go.
I think it's from
I think you're right, actually. I read about it, but I didn't remember it myself. But
yeah,
that's very cool. He and then movies he was in, right? There's quite a few movies he was in.
He was in The Man Who Fell to Earth, which I watched sometime in the last 5 or 6 years because I remember that. And I thought, that's kind of curious. And it's they advertised it on TV, so it must have come through theaters. But it's really an art film. I mean, it's something the average person would just scratch their head and say, "What?" I watched most of it and thought, this is really out there. And I wonder if even Bowie wrote it and directed it. I'm not sure. But he was also in what's that one where he's got the weird hair, sort of a sci-fi
Labyrinth
80s thing. Labyrinth.
That was a Jim Henson project.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't really see it all, but he plays. I guess he's a goblin, but.
Well, he's on the cover of that, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's on the cover of the movie poster? Is he the main character?
He's one of the main characters. He's a goblin. Okay. They call him a goblin, but he looks like a warlock to me. But it's more of a sort of Harry Potter type of a movie, like more of a pseudo-teen kids movie. I think. I mean, because I
was gonna say Dune, but that was Sting.
That was Sting. Yeah.
What else was David Bowie?
The Prestige.
Didn't see that.
I saw The Prestige. That's with Hugh Jackman and who's the other guy? I can't think. Christian Bale, and they play two.
Was that one about magicians?
Yeah, and I couldn't even remember that David Bowie was. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again. It is a good movie. The whole movie's about these two magicians who are competing with to have this trick, right?
I think I either looked for it or started watching it or I know at least I saw a preview.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, I do know the one you're talking about. Yes. Yeah.
But I didn't know I didn't recall that he was in that, at all.
Well, that's not that old, is it? That's only a few years old.
Yeah, it's not that old. But anyway, yeah, he was in that movie. So anyway, the other songs that came to my mind too, like Rebel Rebel, right? Hero. You mentioned Heroes, I think.
No.
Oh no. We can be heroes just for one day. Heroes for just one day.
Yeah, and that was remade by what's his name, Bob Dylan's son, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Which I didn't like.
Oh, that's right, the Wallflowers.
Yeah,
Wallflowers. But you talked about videos. I mean, he became there was a really interesting video he did for Blue Jean. Do you remember seeing that one? Blue Jean.
Yeah, that's the makeup in that is very, very unique. But he plays two parts in that.
Yes.
He plays the performer on stage, and then he plays this guy with like a Band-Aid on his nose, looking very kind of nerdy.
Yeah.
And he comes in and sits next to this girl, and he's trying to have a conversation with her, and she doesn't appear to be too interested in him. It's kind of comical, but and the character he plays on stage, almost like this Aladdin kind of character with the weird makeup and the costume, and that's a very catchy tune. I like that.
He did a stint. It's funny you mentioned Tin Machine or Tin Man a while back. You were talking about Tin Man.
Yeah.
He did a stint there in a band.
Tin Machine.
Yes, right. And
who's the guitar player in that?
I had no idea this existed. Right?
Was Tony Levine in that?
I have no idea.
Was it Robert Fripp and Tony Levine, or am I thinking of something else?
I can't tell you. I have no idea.
I remember who was in that. Yeah, but there was something called Tin Machine, which he was in. Yeah.
But, needless to say, if I think of my life, I think of the 70s. I think of, like I said, In the Car. I mean, Fame, Golden Years, Young Americans. All these songs, all the young dudes, all these songs playing in the 80s. There was a soundtrack. The videos were being played all the time. I'm hearing the music in the car. And then, like I said, as we got into the 90s, it was much more, like my recollections of David Bowie, again, are much more around some of the live performances and the collaborations they did. Those are the key things. Because I'm not a huge Bowie fan either, but obviously there's a lot of people who are.
Oh, he's got as many followers as any of the big ones, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Stones, Beatles. People just love Bowie, and I did too. But I mean, I wasn't as big a collector of his material. I had a couple of Bowie albums, but to me, what I respect more than anything was just his style and his dedication to being an original.
There was nothing. I mean, go look at his music or anything he ever did, and try and pick something that he did and say, "Oh, that reminds you of so and so." That came before him, and he created so much. So, as you said, he created so much original content in every single way. And like I said, it's unfathomable to me the way he writes. Like I said, I talked about songwriting before. I just can't imagine, even Golden Years or simple songs that have these quirky twists and melodies and vocals and use of music. There's no stock drum beats in anything he did. Everything was very, 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 very creative. So, I mean, we don't have to belabor the topic, Jeff. I mean, we just want to celebrate, make sure it's timely because he died. We want to make sure we celebrate him on Radio Blah Blah. And even though our name is a bit of a joke, this topic certainly isn't.
No, just getting back to you mentioned Blue Jean, the Blue Jean video. And earlier I had talked about how when the video age came along, he kind of toned down his image.
Yeah.
And Let's Dance was big for him. He had 3 big, huge hits off that. His next album, I'm not sure the album's name, but that's where the Blue Jean comes from. And look how much he went back, how normal he looked in those 3 videos from Let's Dance. Now look at Blue Jean and how different he looked. He's gone right back to, it's almost like a Ziggy Stardust kind of a character. I mean, not the same thing, but he's gone back to the makeup and the theatrics and the costume, which I liked. And I don't think he did much of that after that.
You never look at anything he did. If you liked it or you didn't like it, you can never say it wasn't interesting.
No, everything was interesting. The only thing I would say, I like everything that Bowie did, and I liked his images, even if they were kind of a little bit spooky. Like I said, when I was younger, the Ashes to Ashes video kind of spooked me out a bit, and the Man Who Fell to Earth TV ads kind of.
Well, you watched that one I shared, Black Star. It'll creep you out. It'll creep you out as well.
Oh yeah, and Lazarus is creepy too. But the song "Less Dance," when that came out, I didn't like it. And it's just the beat and the tempo and the there was nothing about the song that I liked, and then followed it right up with Modern Love, which I thought that's great. That's got energy and it's got tempo, and it's I just thought it was a much more fun song. And China Girl, I don't know if I like that so much in the 80s, but I listen to it now and I'm thinking, geez, that's got real emotion and depth. What's the word I used the other day to describe it? Can't remember. But anyway, I like.
Well, I think the '80s were made for David Bowie. He was ready for the '80s and the '70s, and like I said, I appreciate that stuff. Everything about the '80s and the early '80s, I just turned my back on because it wasn't my thing. New wave wasn't my thing. Punk wasn't my thing. I was still clinging on to my classic rock world, you know. And even when I played in new wave bands, I played them like a rock star. And but his music, same thing. I mean, I kind of came to appreciate it a little bit during the time because my wife liked to listen to it. But
okay, here's what I want to say about Bowie. I think people like Bowie and Zappa and Lady Gaga, whomever, Alice Cooper, I think they're important to the whole musical landscape, and there's a reason why they're important. Because they're originals, and there's this whole sea of people that aren't doing that. You know, and if we don't accept and embrace these artists that are true originals and allow them to flourish, even if we don't always understand their music or their messages, then, you know, what are we doing? We create a homogenous and boring musical landscape that is Hall & Oates. that is Huey Lewis. That is Whitney Houston. I mean, come on. Right? I mean, you can't even compare some of that 80s schlock that was just so mainstream. You can't even compare that to the work of David Bowie. That's why I think people like Bowie and Zappa are important.
Well, I'm never
in that whole musical landscape. You've got to have people.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you take I've never been impressed. Like you see these videos of 14-year-old girl plays Eruption. You know, on guitar. Says, okay, she learned to play Eruption. Okay, write it. You know, I mean, you can't do any of these things. I mean, sure. I mean, I'm never impressed by being able to jump through hoops or to be able to copy someone else or, nice. But like you said, without it, that's why I have a hard time with sampling. And I'm with you. Like, they don't exist. I mean, I can take music and put it all together and make a new song out of it, but I have nothing to work with. If I suppose you consider the landscape of the world that music that as notes, but I'm with you on this. Is that those special artists that create something new that set people off in a different direction. And David Bowie was absolutely, you could count on him, like I said, to do things creative and so I mean, I hate to say sorely missed because he's contributed so much. I mean, if we all could contribute a tenth of that to this, then we would be contributing a huge amount, right?
Yeah. And what's the way that? It's funny that when I was in high school, the stuff I was listening to was starting to get to be a little bit old hat. I was still listening to 70s rock. I had my Boston and Cheap Trick records and AC/DC and Ted Nugent. I'm a rocker at heart. But I noticed that people were finding something really special in David Bowie. And I said, well, I got to check this out, because it sounds like there's something special going on there. And not necessarily what I'm hearing on Much Music. It's not, there's something beyond Let's Dance and China Girl. There's something else happening there. So I certainly had to go check that out. And I was very pleased with what I found with his body of work. Just such a great surprise when you discover something that's been around for a while and say, okay, I missed this in the 70s. There's no reason why I can't start discovering this now. And I've gone through a lot of bands like that. I mean, Jethro Tull. I never listened to Jethro Tull ever. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, just started buying some Jethro Tull records. I was like, wow, talk about talent. And it's not for everyone. Some people hate Jethro Tull. I just loved it. Bought almost everything they ever recorded.
Well, no, but see, the thing is, like, not everybody's into heavy metal like you are.
Well, not in heavy metal
Oh
at
yeah,
all.
well they won. Jethro Tull won the first heavy metal one.
Yeah, they won an award for metal album of the
I
year.
get a kick of that, Lars.
Even Ian Anderson finds that.
Yeah,
kind of
Lars
strange,
Ulrich,
right?
when
And then-
Metallica finally won it the year, and they said they made a joke saying, "Well, we're just lucky that Jethro Tull didn't have an album out this year."
Well, I think it was the year after that. Alice Cooper was giving the presentation, and he opens the envelope. He goes, "Jethro
Yeah.
Tull." No, I'm just joking.
Anyway.
So that became a bit of a joke
Yeah.
for Tull.
So I think we've covered it off pretty good, Jeff, and I think so.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
certainly condolences to David Bowie fans. The
Mm-hmm.
good news is, for artists like this, is that their legacy is massive, and
If we could only all leave that kind of a legacy when we go, and someone like Bowie is just so special to leave. He'd be more than just a tombstone
Right.
in a graveyard somewhere, which is where 99.9% of us are heading.
Yep.
To leave that kind of a legacy and that kind of a following and that body of work, yeah, it's amazing.
well, anyway, I there's so many things we could cover, but
Yep.
so there you go. So there's I think we should wrap that one up, Jeff, and
Definitely,
and extend. We'll move on to our next show, and but hey, thanks to David Bowie wherever you are.
Yes, thank you, David, for all the cool licks and the originality and the costumes and the Ziggy Stardust, and just love it all.
Right on.
Okay, then. Well, this is Jeff Scott in New Brunswick, Canada.
And Jeff Gray in Stewiacke, Nova Scotia.
Until we meet on the next Radio Blah
Blah,
Blah,
blah, blah.
take care, folks, and play lots of David Bowie.
Play lots of David Bowie. Blah blah blah.
Blah, blah, blah. All right, see you,
Bye.
Jeff. Bye.